Why is her name on this bracelet? Clara Bennett asked, holding up a torn hospital wristband between both small hands. The VIP room went still. Luca Moretti's fingers froze on the silver signet ring at his knuckle. Dr. Adrian Vale stepped forward too quickly, his smile polished and wrong. On the bed, the unconscious woman's chart read Jane Ward. But the bracelet read Serena Moretti. Clara swallowed. It was in the bag for things people don't want found. 3 hours earlier, the hallway outside room 714 smelled like antiseptic, lilies, and something sharper beneath it, like plastic warmed under too much light. Clara noticed because hospitals had their own kinds of smells, and this one had changed. Her mother, Grace Bennett, was folding clean towels onto the lower shelf of a housekeeping cart, each towel squared at the corners the way the floor supervisor demanded. Clara stood beside her with her pale blue backpack pressed to her knees and her little green notebook tucked under one arm. She was not supposed to wander. Grace had said it twice before they entered the VIP wing. Eyes down, voice low, hands to yourself. Clara had nodded because she knew what her mother really meant. Do not give them a reason. St. Bartholomew Private Hospital did not look like the other hospitals Clara had seen from bus windows. The VIP floor had marble under the nurses' shoes, brass numbers on the doors, and flowers so fresh they looked replaced before they could die. Even the silence felt expensive. At the far end of the hall, 2 men in dark suits stood outside room 714, not like hospital security, but like doors that had learned to breathe. Grace did not look at them. Clara did. One of the men touched his earpiece when the elevator opened. A woman stepped out first, tall and beautiful in a cream coat, carrying white lilies wrapped in silver paper. Vivian Russo smiled at everyone without showing warmth to anyone. Behind her came Dr. Adrian Vale, his white coat buttoned perfectly, his voice low as he said, "Mr. Moretti should not be disturbed by unnecessary details today." Clara wrote the word unnecessary in her notebook because adults used that word when they wanted other people to stop asking questions. Then Luca Moretti arrived. He did not hurry. He did not need to. The hallway seemed to arrange itself around him. Black suit, old watch, silver ring with the letter M, eyes that moved once and made people stand straighter. Clara had seen powerful men before on television, but Luca Moretti did not look loud enough to be powerful. He looked quiet enough to make loud people nervous. Vivian touched his sleeve. "Just a short visit," she said softly. "Then we leave. Dr. Vale says there is no reason to reopen old wounds." Luca did not answer. His gaze passed over the closed door of room 714, then over the flowers, then over Grace's cleaning cart. For half a second, his eyes stopped on Clara's notebook. Clara looked down fast, but not before she saw something in his face she could not name. Not anger, not sadness. Something locked. Grace pushed the cart closer to the wall to make room. "Good morning," she murmured. Dr. Vale barely glanced at her. "The waste bag outside 714 needs to be removed before visitors arrive." Grace's hands tightened on the towel stack. "Yes, doctor." Clara saw the bag then. It was not in the regular bin. It sat under the medication cart, gray plastic twisted at the top, with a white label stuck crooked across it. "Shred only." Clara frowned. Paper went in shred bags. Not plastic. Not tubing. Not things with clasps. When Grace stepped into the supply alcove for fresh gloves, Clara heard a tiny sound from inside the bag, a dry tick against the floor, as if something hard had slipped against the plastic. She crouched, not opening it all the way, just looking where the twisted top had loosened. A strip of white hospital plastic peeked through a fold. Clara pinched the edge and pulled. It was a wristband, bent almost in half, the adhesive end torn and curled. A clean white sticker had been pressed over part of the printed line, but one red mark still showed beneath it. She turned it toward the light. Name, Serena Moretti. Room, 714B. Clara's stomach felt cold in a way the hallway was not. The room beside her had a brass plaque that said 714, but the whiteboard inside, visible through the half-open door, said patient. Jane Ward, bed, 714A. On the bed lay a woman with pale skin, dark hair spread thinly over the pillow, and one wrist resting above the blanket. A new hospital bracelet circled that wrist, so clean it had no crease where skin should have bent it. Clara heard footsteps behind her. Dr. Vale was coming back with Vivian. Grace saw the bracelet in Clara's hand and went pale. "Clara," she whispered, not angry, just afraid. "Put that down." But Clara was already looking from the old wristband to the woman on the bed, then to the gray bag marked for shredding. Something was wrong in the small places adults expected children not to notice. The sticker on the bracelet had not been placed straight. Under the white edge, the red mark looked like a warning trying to breathe through paper. Then Luca Moretti stepped into room 714, and Dr. Vale began to close the door behind him. Clara moved before she had time to be brave. She walked into the room with the bracelet held in both hands, and the first thing Luca Moretti saw was not her face, not her backpack, not her mother reaching for her from the doorway. It was the name on the torn band. Serena Moretti. The woman in the bed did not move. Vivian's smile stayed in place, but her eyes went first to Dr. Vale, not to Luca. And on the underside of the sticker Clara had lifted with one careful fingernail, a red allergy code was still visible, hidden under the label someone had used to erase her name. The red code did not look like much at first, just a thin line beneath the crooked sticker. But Clara saw the way Dr. Adrian Vale's hand stopped in midair when she tilted the bracelet toward the light. It was not the stop of a man annoyed by a child. It was the stop of a man who had almost reached too quickly. "That is medical waste," he said, and his voice stayed smooth enough for the room to pretend nothing had happened. "Young lady, you should not be touching that." Clara's fingers tightened around the torn plastic band. Grace stood behind her now, one hand hovering near Clara's shoulder, too afraid to grab her in front of Luca Moretti and too afraid not to. "I'm sorry," Grace said, the words coming out small. "Mr. Moretti, doctor, I'm so sorry." She didn't mean to enter the room. Vivian Russo took one soft step forward, her cream coat brushing against the side of the bed. The white lilies in her arms looked almost too bright against the gray hospital blanket. "Of course she didn't," Vivian said gently, but her eyes barely touched Clara. "Children get curious, especially when they are brought into places where they don't belong." The sentence was wrapped in kindness, but it landed on Grace like a hand pressing the back of her neck. Clara looked up at her mother and saw the warning there. "Be quiet. Give it back. Please." Dr. Vale extended his hand. "The bracelet, Clara." The fact that he knew her name made her stomach tighten. She had never told it to him. Luca noticed it too. His gaze moved from the doctor's open palm to Clara's face, then to Grace, then to the new bracelet on the woman in the bed. He did not speak yet. He only shifted his thumb once over the silver M on his signet ring. "It was not in the red bin," Clara said. Her voice shook, but the words came out clear. "It was under the medicine cart, in the gray bag." Dr. Vale's smile thinned. "You opened a restricted disposal bag? It was already loose at the top. That is not your decision to make." Vivian gave a soft sigh, the kind adults used when they wanted a child corrected without making themselves look cruel. "Luca, she is frightened. Her mother is frightened. We do not need to turn a child's mistake into something dramatic." Grace's face had gone colorless. "I'll sign whatever report you need," she whispered. "Please don't make trouble for the floor. Please don't call my supervisor." "There will need to be an incident statement," Dr. Vale said. A minor entered a patient room, handled confidential material, and disturbed a private medical visit. Clara looked at the bracelet again. Confidential material. That sounded like another adult word for something people wanted hidden. Luca finally moved, not toward Clara, toward the bed. He looked at the woman's wrist. The new band there was bright, flat, and clean, the kind of clean that did not belong to someone who had slept in it, sweated. Under it, turned their arm against a blanket, or been sick long enough for nurses to forget the exact hour they first put it on. His eyes stayed on it a second too long. "Doutor Vale noticed." "Mr. Moretti, I assure you the current band is correct. The child found an old discarded label. These things happen in a hospital of this size." Do they? Luca asked. 2 words. No anger. No raised voice. The room became colder anyway. Vivian touched his arm again. Luca, please. You came here for closure, not paperwork. Clara did not know what closure meant in the way Vivian said it, but she knew the woman on the bed did not look closed. She looked trapped inside a name that was not hers. Nurse Helen Parks appeared in the doorway with a stack of folded patient gowns. The moment she saw the old bracelet in Clara's hands, one gown slipped from the pile and landed on the floor. Dr. Vale turned his head slightly. Nurse Parks, he said, still pleasant. That will be all. Nurse Helen bent too quickly to pick up the gown. Yes, doctor. But before she stood, her eyes went to the bed and then to the bracelet. Not to the name first. To the red mark under the sticker. Clara saw it. So did Luca. No one touches that band, Luca said. Dr. Vale's hand lowered. Vivian's smile stayed in place, but for the first time, it did not reach her eyes. Grace pulled Clara gently back, and Clara let herself be moved, but she did not let go of the bracelet. Her small thumb rested beside the hidden red code. She leaned toward her mother and whispered the only thing she knew for certain. Mom, that lady has 2 names. Across the bed, the new bracelet on the unconscious woman's wrist turned slightly under the light, and Clara saw that its adhesive edge had not yellowed at all. The adhesive edge on the new bracelet was too clean, too pale, too perfect, and Clara could not stop looking at it. Hospitals made old things look new all the time, but not skin. Skin remembered. Tape left marks.
Plastic band.
A wristband worn through sleep and medicine and fever should have had a crease near the clasp, or a dull place where the blanket rubbed it. This one looked like it had been placed there after someone had already decided what the woman was supposed to be called. Clara, Grace whispered, her fingers closing lightly around her daughter's shoulder. No more. Clara nodded, but her eyes moved to the whiteboard beside the bed. Patient, Jane Ward. Room, 714A. Underneath, in blue marker, someone had written NPO after midnight, fall risk, private. The handwriting was clean, controlled, almost pretty. Clara looked down at the torn bracelet in her hands. Serena Moretti. Room 714B. The B was small, printed so close to the number that an adult in a hurry might miss it. Clara did not say anything yet. She reached slowly into the side pocket of her pale blue backpack and pulled out her little green notebook. Grace closed her eyes for half a second, as if she already knew that notebook was about to cost them something. Put that away, Dr. Vale said, still polite. This is not school. Clara held it against her chest. It's not for school. Vivian gave a soft, breathy laugh, careful and elegant. She keeps notes? She asked Grace, as though Clara were a habit her mother should apologize for. Children do that, Grace said quickly. She writes down signs and room numbers sometimes. It keeps her busy while I work. That is exactly why children should not be left unsupervised on a private medical floor, Dr. Vale replied. Luca turned his head slightly. Let her open it. No one moved for a moment. Dr. Vale blinked once, then smiled. Mr. Moretti, with respect, we cannot build medical concern from a child's notebook. I didn't ask you to build anything, Luca said. I asked her to open it. Clara's thumb trembled as she flipped past drawings of elevators, vending machine prices, a crooked sketch of the chapel window, and a list of words she had heard but did not understand. Then she found the page from that morning. She had written in pencil because pens were only for grown-ups at the nurse's station. Room 714, 910. Nurse said Mrs. M. Doctor said Jane. Cart came after. Old band gone. Grace made a tiny sound behind her. Dr. Vale's smile did not leave, but his voice changed by half an inch. May I see that? Clara stepped back before she meant to. No, sir. The room tightened around the 2 words. Clara had never refused a doctor before. She had never refused any adult in a place where her mother needed a paycheck. But the bracelet was in one hand and the notebook was in the other, and together they felt like the only 2 things in the room that had not learned how to lie. Luca looked at her, not kindly, not warmly, but directly. Read it. Clara swallowed. At 9:10, Nurse Helen pushed the cart past the door. She said, Mrs. M needs the soft tape because the band is cutting her. Then Dr. Vale came from the elevator, and she said Jane after that. Nurse Helen Parks was still at the doorway, half bent over the gown she had dropped. Her face had gone a shade closer to the sheets. Nurse, Dr. Vale said quietly. It was not loud. It was worse than loud. It made the nurse stand up too fast. I may have said initials, Nurse Helen whispered. I might have said room M. I don't remember exactly. Clara looked at her, confused by how quickly fear could make an adult misplace a whole word. You said Mrs. M, Clara said. Because you looked at her when you said it. Vivian shifted the lilies from one arm to the other, and the silver paper crackled like a small fire. Luca, this is cruel now. The nurse is being pressured by a child's imagination. Luca did not answer her. He walked to the foot of the bed and looked at the whiteboard, then at the 4 bag hanging beside it. The label on the 4 read J. Ward, ID 48 to 17K. He took the torn bracelet from Clara without pulling it from her grip, waiting until she chose to let go. On the old band, beneath the bent plastic, the printed line read S. Moretti, ID 48 to 17 kilometers. 1 letter. 1 missing letter at the end. Luca's jaw tightened so slightly Clara might have missed it if she had not been watching his face the way she watched hallway signs. Dr. Vale stepped closer, hands folded. Transcription variations happen when records migrate between systems. At 9:10 in the morning? Luca asked. Dr. Vale's mouth paused before the answer arrived. Across any system, yes. At the doorway, Nurse Helen's folded gown slid again, and this time she did not bend quickly enough to hide the small access card clipped inside the stack. The card was not hers. Clara saw the name printed on it before the nurse covered it with her hand. Serena Moretti. Serena Moretti. The name on the access card was there for less than 2 seconds before Nurse Helen's hand closed over it. But Clara had already seen it, and Luca Moretti had seen Clara seeing it. That was enough to change the air in the room. Dr. Adrian Vale stepped between them with the practiced calm of a man used to turning fear into procedure. This has gone far enough, he said. Mr. Moretti, for the safety of the patient and the privacy of this floor, I need the child and her mother removed from the room. Vivian Russo looked at Grace with soft pity that somehow felt colder than anger. Grace, isn't it? You understand how serious this is. Private patient. A restricted area. A minor handling medical materials. No one wants your job affected, but we cannot ignore policy. Grace's lips parted, but no sound came out. Clara felt her mother's hand tighten around the back of her sweater. Not pulling, just trembling there. As if one wrong breath could knock their whole life off the edge. 2 hospital security officers appeared near the doorway, and behind them stood Luca's consigliere, a narrow man in a charcoal suit named Dominic, watching everything without blinking. Clara was suddenly aware of how small her shoes looked on the polished floor. The room had machines taller than her, adults with badges, adults with rings, adults with voices that could make papers appear and disappear. She pressed her notebook against her stomach and stared at the bed, not at their faces. I didn't touch the lady, she said. I only touched the bracelet that was already off. Dr. Vale exhaled gently, like he was disappointed in her for being difficult. You do not know what you touched. Luca's voice came from the foot of the bed. Then we test it. No one answered at first. The monitor beside the bed continued its soft, even beeping. Vivian's fingers tightened around the lilies. Dr. Vale turned slowly. Test what? The bands, Luca said. The one on her wrist and the one in the child's hand. Dr. Vale gave a small, professional smile. The bedside scanner will only confirm the current chart. It will not clarify a discarded label. Then it should be harmless. Luca did not raise his voice, but Dominic was already moving. He rolled the medication scanner closer to the bed and angled the screen so everyone could see. Nurse Helen's face looked as though every light in the ceiling had turned toward her. Dr. Vale nodded once, accepting the test because refusing it would look worse than allowing it. "Fine," he said, "for Mr. Moretti's peace of mind." Nurse Helen lifted the woman's wrist with careful fingers and scanned the new bracelet. The screen flashed green. Jane Ward, room 714A, medication schedule active. Dr. Vale spread one hand slightly, as if the machine itself had testified. "There. The patient is Jane Ward." Clara looked at the woman's pale wrist. Then she looked at the old band in Luca's hand. "Try the other one," she said. Vivian tilted her head. "Sweetheart, the doctor just explained." Clara did not look at her. The machine didn't explain the red mark. A silence fell so clean it felt cut. Luca held the torn bracelet under the scanner. For 1 second nothing happened. Then the screen flashed red. Allergy conflict. Serena Moretti. Room 714B. Medication hold required. Nurse Helen made a small sound and covered her mouth. The security officers stopped shifting at the door. Grace whispered Clara's name like a prayer and a warning at the same time. Dr. Vale stepped forward immediately. "Old data," he said. "That is exactly what I meant. The system is pulling archived information from a corrupted band." "Archived information can still be true," Luca said. His eyes did not leave the screen. Dr. Vale's jaw moved once. "Not clinically actionable without physician confirmation." "Then confirm this." Luca pointed to the medication tray. What was she about to receive? Nurse Helen looked at Dr. Vale before she looked at the tray, and that look hurt her more than any confession could have. Clara saw a capped syringe in a clear plastic sleeve and a paper medication slip clipped beneath it. She could not read the long drug name, but she could read the red warning on the scanner because it had fewer words. Medication hold required. "Stop the medication," Luca said. Dr. Vale lifted both hands, palms open, calm as marble. "Mr. Moretti, withholding prescribed treatment based on a child's interference and a discarded band could endanger the patient." Vivian stepped closer to Luca. "Please, this is what I was afraid of. You are being pulled back into pain by a mistake." Clara felt heat climb into her face, but she did not cry. She pointed at the scanner with one finger. "It says hold." Dr. Vale turned to her, his smile still there, but thinner. "Machines do not understand context." Luca looked at him then. "The machine has no reason to impress me, doctor." Dr. Vale straightened, as if the sentence had touched something beneath his coat. He reached toward the scanner to clear the alert. "I'll reset it and request a clean read." But before his finger hit the screen, a small gray line appeared at the bottom, the kind of line adults ignored because it looked technical and boring. Clara read it before anyone could wipe it away. Last modified by A. Vale, 2:13 a.m. Last modified by A. Vale, 2:13 a.m. The words sat at the bottom of the scanner in a thin gray line, small enough to be ignored by anyone who wanted the room to keep breathing normally. No one breathed normally. Dr. Vale's hand hovered an inch from the screen, his finger still lifted, his face composed except for the faint tightening beside his mouth. Luca Moretti looked at the line for a long moment, then took out his phone and photographed it before anyone could clear it. "Do not touch that machine," he said. Dr. Vale lowered his hand slowly. "Mr. Moretti, that is not what you think it is. Physicians access records at all hours. My account may appear on updates made by nursing staff, pharmacy staff, or automated system migration." His explanation was smooth, reasonable, nearly boring. That made it more frightening. Luca did not argue. He glanced once toward Dominic. "Call Rinaldi. Hospital counsel too. I want the audit log preserved, the medication tray sealed, and every person in this room noted." Vivian's face softened with concern. The kind that looked perfect from a distance. "Luca," she said quietly, "please don't turn this into a public war over a corrupted file. You know what this hospital meant to your father. You know what old grief does to you." Clara did not understand everything, but she understood old grief in the way Luca's eyes did not move when Vivian said it. She also understood that Vivian had said hospital, father, grief, and you without once looking at the woman in the bed. Nurse Helen stood beside the medication cart with both hands wrapped around its metal handle. The capped syringe lay untouched in its clear sleeve. Beneath it was a paper medication slip, folded once at the corner as if someone had handled it in a hurry. Clara stared at the paper because the ink on it was not black like the labels from the printer. It was blue. A bright, expensive blue. The same color Clara had noticed earlier at the reception desk when Vivian signed the visitor book with a silver pen and tapped it twice against the counter before putting it in her purse. Clara lifted one small finger, then stopped. Grace felt her move and whispered, "Clara, don't." Clara did not step forward. She only pointed. That paper wasn't printed like the others. Nurse Helen looked down. Dr. Vale reached for the slip, but Dominic's hand closed around his wrist before he touched it. Not hard, just enough. "Chain of custody," Dominic said. His voice was barely louder than the monitor. Dr. Vale's eyes flashed for the first time, then disappeared back under professionalism. Luca leaned over the tray without touching anything. The slip read Jane Ward. Administer as ordered. At the bottom was a physician authorization, a rushed version of Dr. Vale's signature. But beside it, in blue ink, someone had written a small note in the margin. Hold family inquiries until transfer. Luca stared at the words. Not long. Longer than usual. Long enough for Clara to notice that his thumb had stopped moving over his ring. "I did not write that," Dr. Vale said immediately. Too immediately. "Those slips pass through multiple hands. Then we will find every hand," Luca replied. Vivian let out a careful breath. "This is becoming dangerous. For the patient, for the staff, for a frightened little girl who should never have been dragged into this." Clara looked down at her notebook, then at the paper slip, then at the flowers still in Vivian's arms. The silver wrapping crackled when Vivian shifted them, and Clara saw the pen clip inside her purse catch the light for 1 second. Blue. The same blue. She had that color, Clara said. The room turned toward her again, and she wished it would not. She kept her eyes on the paper because faces made it harder to be brave. The lady with the flowers. At the desk. Her pen was blue. Vivian's expression did not change, but her fingers closed so tightly around the lilies that one white petal bent in half. "A great many pens are blue, sweetheart." Luca said nothing. He took another photograph. Then another. Dominic opened a sterile evidence pouch from the emergency legal kit his men carried like other people carried umbrellas. The old bracelet went in first. Then the new bracelet was photographed on the patient's wrist. Then the medication slip, the capped syringe, and the printed allergy alert. Luca made Nurse Helen say the time aloud while his phone recorded. 10:26 a.m., she whispered. Medication not administered. Only then did Luca look back at Dr. Vale. Open the audit log. Dr. Vale hesitated. That requires authorization. Luca's eyes shifted toward the unconscious woman. Then consider this my authorization until someone proves I am not family. The words landed strangely, too heavy for the room. Hospital counsel arrived breathless 3 minutes later with a tablet and a badge swinging crooked from his jacket. Under Luca's stare, he pulled the activity report. The 2:13 a.m. change was there. Serena Moretti to Jane Ward. Allergy field removed. Room changed from 714B to 714A. But below it was another entry, not a medical order. A transport request, drafted but not yet executed. The paper trail showed no destination on the visible line, only a scheduled time. 11:40 p.m. Clara watched Luca read it, and for the first time, the coldness in his face turned toward Vivian instead of Dr. Vale. On the back of the medication slip, where the paper had pressed against another form, a faint reversed imprint showed through the light. Transfer before 11:40. Transfer before 11:40. The faint words were not written on the medication slip itself. They were pressed into it from another page, like a secret leaning hard enough to leave a bruise. Luca Moretti did not touch the paper. He only angled it toward the light with the edge of his phone while Dominic photographed the imprint from 3 directions. Dr. Vale watched the movement with the stillness of a man trying not to look trapped by something too small. That could be from any form, the doctor said. Medication slips are stacked all day. Then we find the form, Luca answered. Vivian took one careful step closer, her voice soft enough to sound wounded. Luca, you are letting this become something it isn't. Clerical issue. A frightened nurse. A child who should be home doing homework. Clara looked down at her sneakers. They had gray scuffs on both toes from kneeling beside her mother's cleaning cart. She did wish she were home. She wished she were at the small kitchen table with the humming refrigerator and the chipped blue mug where Grace kept pencils. She wished the loudest sound in the world were the spoon tapping the side of a glass, while her mother stirred instant coffee after a late shift. But the woman in the bed had a name that someone had tried to throw away, and Clara could not make herself forget the letters just because rich adults wanted the room quiet again. I don't want anything, Clara said. Her voice was small, but it did not bend. I just don't want my mom to sign a lie. Grace's hand covered her mouth. Nurse Helen looked away as if that sentence had touched a place she had been trying to protect for years. Luca's eyes moved to Grace. What lie? Grace shook her head at first. Fear came before words. Then she looked at the gray shred bag, at the bracelet sealed inside the evidence pouch, and at her daughter standing too straight for an 8-year-old. A form, she whispered. This morning, they told me to take a stack of old forms down to destruction. I didn't read them. I never read patient papers. But one page slid out on the cart. Dr. Vale's voice sharpened by a fraction. Ms. Bennett, be careful. Luca did not look at him. Let her finish. Grace swallowed. It had Mr. Moretti's name on it. Not printed. Signed. But it looked wrong. I only noticed because the ink was fresh and the paper was old. Dominic asked for the hospital counsel's tablet. Within seconds, the transport request was opened fully. The destination line appeared now, unhidden by the small screen view. A private long-term care facility 42 miles north of the city, outside St. Bartholomew's shared medical network. The patient name read Jane Ward. The pickup time read 11:40 p.m. The authorizing relative read Marco Moretti, family medical proxy. Luca stared at his brother's name. Nothing in his face changed, and that was what made the room feel more dangerous. Vivian lowered the lilies slightly. Marco handles family logistics when you're overwhelmed. You know that. Luca's thumb moved once over his ring. Not for her. For Jane Ward, Dr. Vale corrected gently. For a patient with no confirmed next of kin. Dominic enlarged the attached proxy document. There was Luca's signature near the bottom, black ink, confident slope, familiar letters. But Luca leaned closer, and for 1 second the old watch on his wrist ticked louder than the monitor beside the bed. I do not sign family documents without the hook. Hospital counsel blinked. The hook. Luca pointed to the last letter of his surname. My father made me write it that way when I was 9. Every family paper, every trust, every medical authorization. That signature is missing it. Clara looked at the screen and saw it then. A tiny absence at the end of a name. A missing curve. A small place where a lie had forgotten how a son obeyed his father. Luca took out his phone and called Marco. He put the call on speaker, but his voice stayed almost gentle. Come to St. Bartholomew. Marco answered after one ring too quickly. Luca? Is she stable? Vivian's eyes flicked up. Dr. Vale stopped breathing through his nose. Luca looked at the woman on the bed. Who? There was a pause so brief a careless person might have missed it. The patient, Marco said. The one Vivian said you were visiting. Luca's gaze darkened. Not with surprise anymore, but with recognition arriving late and cruel. Come to the hospital, he said. Bring the truth, or bring a lawyer. Marco's voice lost its polish for half a second. Just don't let that woman wake up before I get there. The call ended. No one moved. Luca looked from the forged signature to Vivian's white flowers, then to Grace and Clara standing like two people waiting to be punished for seeing too much. In that silence, he understood that he had not merely missed a clue. He had trusted the wrong people long enough for them to put a living woman, a frightened nurse, and a maid's little girl in danger. Luca did not raise his voice after that. He did something worse. He became courteous. "Doctor," he said, turning back to Adrian Vale with a calm so smooth it made the monitor's beeping sound too loud. "You were right about one thing. This should not be handled in a patient room." Dr. Vale studied him carefully. Vivian did too. For the first time all morning, neither of them seemed certain what expression they were supposed to wear. "We can move the discussion to administration," Dr. Vale said. "Quietly." "Quietly," Luca repeated. The word landed like a door closing. He looked at Dominic. "No one enters 714 except the independent team. No medication. No transport. No flowers. No paperwork." Vivian's fingers tightened around the lilies. "Flowers." Luca looked at them once. "They block the view." Vivian smiled, but it came half a second late. "Luca, they're flowers." Clara stood beside Grace, still holding her notebook, and watched the silver paper tremble. She remembered the flowers because they had been too white, too bright, always placed near the glass cabinet beside the medication cart, never near the woman's face. Adults brought flowers to make a room softer. Vivian brought them to one corner. Clara did not know why that mattered until Dominic asked for the hallway camera feed and the little red loading circle spun on the hospital counsel's tablet. The room went quiet in a different way then. Not shocked. Waiting. On the screen, the VIP. Hallway appeared from the night before, blue-gray and empty, the kind of hallway that looked innocent because no one was standing in it. At 2:07 a.m., Marco Moretti walked out of the elevator with his collar up and his right hand in his pocket. He wore the same family ring as Luca, but Clara leaned forward before anyone asked her anything. "He turns it around," she said softly. Everyone looked at her. Clara pointed to the screen. "The stone part is inside his hand. Mr. Luca's ring faces out." Luca's eyes did not leave the tablet. "My brother does that when he doesn't want cameras to catch the crest." Dr. Vale folded his hands. "A family member visiting at night is not a crime." "No," Luca said. "It is a time." The video jumped ahead. At 2:12 a.m., Vivian appeared outside room 714 carrying white lilies. She did not knock. She did not look toward the bed through the glass. She turned her body and stood beside the cabinet, flowers raised slightly in both arms, as if arranging them. For 41 seconds, the camera saw almost nothing but white petals and silver wrapping reflected in the glass. Behind that reflection, a shadow moved at the patient's wrist. Nurse Helen began to cry without making a sound. "I knew something was wrong," she whispered. "I heard the band snap." Dr. Vale turned to her with a voice still dressed in professionalism. "Nurse Parks, you should not speculate under stress." Luca did not look at the doctor. "She will not speculate. She will give a statement with counsel present." Dominic placed a chair beside Nurse Helen, not in front of her, not blocking her, just close enough that she was no longer standing alone. Then he took out a recorder, set it on the tray table and clicked it on. The tiny red light blinked once. Clara watched the light because it looked like the hidden allergy mark on the bracelet, a small red thing nobody wanted noticed. Vivian lowered the flowers at last. One petal fell to the floor. "This is becoming ugly," she said. A child, a frightened maid, a confused nurse, all being used to reopen something that should have stayed buried. Luca looked at Clara then, and she expected him to tell her to leave. Instead, he asked, "Where did she put the flowers when she came this morning?" Clara's throat felt tight. She did not want to be important. She only wanted her mother's hand to stop shaking. "Not by the bed," she said. "By the cabinet. Like last night." Dominic paused the video and enlarged the reflection on the glass. The picture blurred, sharpened, blurred again. Then the shadow near the bed became a hand pulling at a bracelet. At the bottom corner of the screen, the hospital gift shop receipt appeared when Vivian set the lilies down for 1 second. The paper caught perfectly in the camera reflection. Paid by card. Vivieni Husu. 2:06 a.m. Vivian stared at the screen, and the room watched her understand, all at once, that Clara Bennett was no longer just the maid's little girl with a notebook. Vivian Russo understood it before anyone said her name. Her eyes left the screen and moved to Luca, not with fear exactly, but with calculation, the quick silent math of a person measuring how much truth could still be buried before the room became too bright. Luca did not give her the room. "Administration," he said. "Now." 20 minutes later, the internal control room of St. Bartholomew Private Hospital looked less like a hospital office than a place where clean language went to hide dirty things. Frosted glass walls, a long walnut table, a row of hospital executives with untouched coffee cups. Hospital counsel sat with his recorder running. Dominic stood by the door. Grace and Clara were placed near the wall at first, until Luca looked at the empty chair beside his own and said, "The child sits where the evidence began." Clara climbed into the chair without swinging her feet. Her blue backpack stayed against her knees, and her green notebook lay closed in both hands. Across the table, Dr. Adrian Vale adjusted his cufflinks. Marco Moretti arrived last, wearing a charcoal coat and the family ring turned outward now, as if that could rewrite the camera. He kissed Vivian on the cheek too quickly, then looked at Luca. "Brother," he said softly, "this has gone too far." Luca placed the first evidence pouch on the table. The old bracelet, Serena Moretti. Then the second photograph. The clean new bracelet marked Jane Ward. Then the scanner image showing allergy conflict. Then the audit log from 2:13 a.m. Then the medication slip with blue ink. Then the transport request for 11:40 p.m. Each item made almost no sound when it touched the table, but the silence after each one grew heavier. Dr. Vale leaned forward. "Individually, none of these proves intent. That is why I brought them together," Luca said. Nurse Helen Parks sat near hospital counsel with a paper cup of water between her hands. She looked smaller than she had in the hallway, but not weaker. When counsel asked her to confirm her statement, she took one breath and nodded. "Dr. Vale told me not to use the name Serena Moretti," she said. "He said Mrs. Moretti did not exist on that floor." Dr. Vale's face tightened. "A stressed nurse is misremembering phrasing." Nurse Helen looked down at her lap. "I thought you'd say that." She reached into the pocket of her scrub jacket and took out an old digital recorder, scratched along one side, the kind staff used for shift notes when computers froze. Clara straightened. She had seen the square shape under the folded gowns earlier, but had not known what it was. Nurse Helen set it on the table, and the little speaker filled the room with static. Then Dr. Vale's voice, low and unmistakable. "Mrs. Moretti does not exist on this floor. If the maid saw anything, write her up. If the child says anything, make it about trespassing." Grace closed her eyes. Clara looked at her mother's hands, the same hands that scrubbed floors no one thanked her for, now folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Luca did not move. His face had gone pale in a way Clara had not seen before. Not frightened, hollowed, as if the recording had not only accused the doctor, but shown him the exact place where his power had failed to protect the people standing closest to the floor. Vivian tried to stand. "This is disgusting," she said. "You are letting employees fabricate a scandal." Clara opened her notebook. She did not mean to speak loudly, but the room was so quiet her voice carried. She said, "If the child says anything." That was before I said anything. In this room. Vivian froze. Marco looked at Clara for the first time as if she were not small at all. Dominic replayed the line. "If the child says anything." Hospital counsel wrote it down. Luca turned his eyes to Vivian, and she gave him the soft, broken expression she had used all morning. "I only wanted to protect you," she whispered. Dominic slid one last image onto the screen. A text pulled from Vivian's phone backup by hospital counsel after she surrendered it under internal review. "If she wakes, he loses everything." Luca read it once, then again. The room waited for anger. Instead, Luca removed the silver signet ring from his finger and set it beside Serena's bracelet. Metal beside plastic, power beside a name someone had tried to destroy. "Call my attorney," he said, his voice almost gentle. "And keep recording." And they did. The recorder on the conference table kept blinking red while Luca Moretti's attorney arrived with 2 associates. while hospital counsel stopped using the word misunderstanding, and while the executives of St. Bartholomew Private Hospital began to understand that the quietest man in the room was no longer protecting the hospital from scandal. He was protecting the evidence from being buried. Dr. Adrian Vale was escorted out first, not by Luca's men, but by hospital security under a written administrative suspension. His badge was removed at the door. His access to patient records was frozen before he reached the elevator. Nurse Helen Parks watched him leave with both hands around her paper cup, and when hospital counsel asked if she wanted to amend her statement, she lifted her chin and said, "No, I want my full statement attached to the patient's file." Vivian Russo tried to leave next, but Luca's attorney placed a document in front of her. Not a threat, not a shout, a notice of preservation. Her phone, her hospital visitor logs, her messages, the gift shop receipt, and every communication with Dr. Vale and Marco Moretti were now part of the record. "Luca," she whispered, her face pale beneath perfect makeup, "you can't mean to do this here." Luca looked at Serena's bracelet sealed in the evidence pouch beside his ring. "This is where you did it." Marco said nothing after that. He only stared at the fake medical proxy until Luca's attorney slid over a second document removing him from emergency signing authority across Moretti family holdings, the port company, the casino accounts, and the charitable trust that had quietly paid for Jane Ward's care. "You're choosing a woman who may not even remember you," Marco said at last. Luca's voice did not rise. "I am choosing the truth you were afraid she would remember." The transfer order for 11:40 p.m. was cancelled in writing. The private ambulance company was notified by counsel, not by rumor. The forged proxy, the medication slip, the audit log, the allergy warning, the camera footage, the white flower receipt, Nurse Helen's recording, Claire's notebook entry, and the old bracelet were catalogued one by one, photographed, sealed, and copied to an independent medical review board. Only after that did Luca return to room 714. The room looked different now, though nothing had moved very far. The same monitor, the same window, the same pale woman under the white blanket. But the wrong name was gone from the board. A new nurse, from outside Dr. Vale's team, wiped away Jane Ward and wrote slowly, in dark blue marker, "Serena Moretti." Then she printed a new hospital bracelet, read the name aloud, checked it against the restored chart, and fastened it around Serena's wrist in front of Luca, Grace, Clara, Nurse Helen, hospital counsel, and the independent physician. No one clapped. That would have made it smaller. Grace stood near the wall, still in her housekeeping uniform, until the hospital administrator walked to her with a written apology. The false incident report against Clara was voided. Grace's missed hours would be paid. Her position would be protected by an outside labor advocate during the investigation. Nurse Helen's prior disciplinary note for improper chart language would be withdrawn and replaced with a witness protection memo. Clara did not understand every sentence, but she understood her mother's face when Grace read the apology and realized it was not hush money. It was the hospital admitting on paper that she and her daughter had told the truth. Luca knelt in front of Clara then, not like a boss rewarding a child, but like a man lowering himself to the height of the person who had seen what he had missed. "You should never have had to be braver than the adults in this room," he said. Clara held the straps of her pale blue backpack. "I was scared. I know. I didn't want my mom to lose her job." Luca looked at Grace, then back at Clara. "She won't." Behind them, Serena moved. It was small at first, just the slightest turn of her fingers beneath the blanket. Luca stood too quickly, then stopped himself as if even hope needed permission now. Serena's eyes opened halfway. They moved across the room, unfocused, then settled on the bracelet at her wrist. Her lips parted. The independent physician leaned close, but Serena was not asking about medicine. Her voice came out thin, broken by years of being called something else. "Who read my name out loud?" Clara did not step forward until Grace nodded. Then she raised one hand, barely above her shoulder. Serena looked at her for a long time, and a tear slid silently into her hair. Luca could not speak. His ring still lay sealed beside the old bracelet downstairs, power locked next to proof. But in that room the only thing that mattered was a name returned to the living. Clara lowered her hand and whispered, "I just read what they forgot to hide." Try this card. Lily Harper's tiny voice landed harder than the machine's red warning. Vincent Moretti's black titanium card lay on the glass counter. Rejected, while the receipt curled out beneath it with the words authority hold. Principal access suspended. Isabella De Luca's hand rested on his sleeve, polished and calm. Vincent, she said softly, loud enough for the watching customers. Maybe power looks different when the machine stops recognizing you. Lily lifted an old ivory-black card with both hands. Mama said this one. 3 hours earlier, Aurora Crown Galleria had opened under clean white lights, soft piano music, and the kind of silence money bought without asking. The marble floors reflected storefronts that sold watches behind glass thicker than a bank window. Vincent Moretti walked through the west entrance with 2 security men behind him, a black suit cut close to his shoulders, his father's silver watch on his left wrist, and the Moretti signet ring on his right hand. People did not stare at him directly. They looked, then looked away. That was how power moved in places like this. Isabella walked beside him in a cream coat, smiling at salespeople as if she had never raised her voice in her life. Her diamond bracelet clicked once every few steps. Behind them, carrying a small shopping bag and keeping close to the service side of the corridor, Clara Harper held Lily's hand. Clara was not supposed to be part of the shopping trip. She had come because Isabella wanted someone to carry garment bags after the fitting, and because Lily had a slight cough that morning and refused to stay with anyone else. Lily wore her cream rabbit backpack and a star-shaped hair clip that kept sliding toward her eyebrow. She did not understand the watches in the windows. She understood her mother's hand, the smell of Isabella's perfume, and the fact that the nice man in the black suit made every grown-up lower their voice. At the entrance to Veyron and Company, the luxury watch boutique, Elliot Vance was already waiting with a smile that looked practiced in a mirror. "Mr. Moretti," he said, stepping forward before Vincent reached the door. "An honor." Vincent noticed. The greeting, then the timing. Elliot did not act surprised to see him. His staff stood too straight. A black velvet tray had already been placed on the center counter, with one watch resting on it as if the choice had been made before anyone arrived. Vincent said nothing. Isabella slipped her hand around his arm. "Don't make that face," she murmured. "It's only a wedding gift." The watch was silver, thin, and old-fashioned, the kind Antonio Moretti would have hated because it looked expensive without looking loyal. Vincent turned his own father's watch once around his wrist. The clasp was worn at the edge. Antonio had worn it through meetings, funerals, baptisms, and one night Vincent still refused to remember clearly. Lily watched that small movement. She did not know it meant grief. She only knew grown-ups touched things when they were trying not to say something. While Isabella leaned over the glass, Clara stood near the side wall, one hand on Lily's shoulder. The child shifted her backpack from one arm to the other. Something inside made a soft cardboard scrape. Clara looked down quickly, too quickly, and pressed the rabbit zipper flat with her palm. "Keep that closed, baby," she whispered. Lily nodded. Across the room, Elliot's eyes flicked toward the backpack, then away. It lasted less than a second, but Vincent saw it reflected in the glass counter. He had built his life on noticing the things people wished they had not done. Isabella selected the watch without asking the price. Elliot placed it in a lacquered box and turned the payment terminal toward Vincent with both hands. "Whenever you're ready, sir." Vincent took out his black titanium card. The boutique seemed to hold its breath. Customers slowed near the doorway. Someone lifted a phone, pretending to check a message. Vincent placed the card flat against the reader. Elliot's thumb hovered near the side of the machine, then pressed something blue so quickly it looked like a twitch. The terminal beeped once. Not approved. Not processing. One flat, cold sound. The receipt began to print before the screen finished blinking. Elliot reached for it, but Vincent placed 2 fingers on the paper and stopped. "Him." The red words glowed on the screen. "Declined." Then beneath it, smaller and worse. "Authority hold. Principal access suspended." Isabella inhaled as if she were embarrassed for him, but her mouth almost smiled before she remembered to soften it. The customers went quiet. Clara's hand tightened around Lily's shoulder. Vincent did not move. For 1 second, the most dangerous man in the room could not speak, because the machine had not said he lacked money. It had said someone, somewhere, had stopped recognizing him as the principal. Then Lily stepped out from behind her mother, opened the rabbit pocket Clara had told her to keep closed, and pulled out an old ivory-black card with a worn corner and a tiny silver crow pressed into its face. For a moment, nobody touched the old card. It rested in Lily Harper's small hands like something too heavy for a child, the worn ivory-black surface catching the boutique lights, the tiny silver crow almost invisible unless a person knew where to look. Vincent Moretti saw it, and so did Elliot Vance. That was the first thing Vincent registered. Not the card. Not Clara's fear. Elliot's eyes went to the crow before they went to Lily's face. Then the manager recovered, smoothing his jacket with 2 fingers and stepping from behind the counter with a smile that had lost its warmth. "Mr. Moretti," he said carefully, "for everyone's protection, I'm going to have to begin fraud procedure." He reached beneath the counter and placed a cream-colored envelope on the glass, already stamped with the boutique logo and the words Payment Irregularity Report. It had been ready too fast. Clara swallowed. "Fraud?" she whispered. "Sir, no. She's a child." "Then you won't mind handing over the bag," Elliot said. Still polite, still soft, still speaking the way people spoke when they wanted cruelty to sound like policy. His eyes dropped to the rabbit backpack. The wallet, the card, and anything else connected to this reserve card should remain with store security until we clarify ownership. Vincent did not move, but something in his face changed by 1 degree. Reserve card. No one had said that yet. Isabella stepped in smoothly, her cream sleeve, brushing Vincent's black one. "Elliot is only doing his job," she said. And then she lowered herself toward Lily with a smile so gentle it made Clara's fingers curl. "Sweetheart, did Mommy tell you rich men are easy to fool?" Lily's lower lip trembled, but she did not cry. She turned her body sideways, putting the card against her chest the way children protect a stuffed animal from being taken. Clara dropped to 1 knee. "Baby, give it to me," she said, but her voice shook so badly it sounded like a plea instead of an instruction. Lily looked from her mother to Vincent, then back at the manager. "Mama said only if Mr. Moretti's card stops working," she said. A woman near the doorway made a quiet sound and lifted her phone higher. One of Vincent's security men stepped forward, but Vincent raised 2 fingers, and the man stopped. No shouting, no threat, just a pause that made the room obey. Vincent picked up the declined receipt and folded it once, slowly, along the red printed line. "No one touches the child," he said. Elliot's smile tightened. "Of course, but the item should be secured." "It is secure," Vincent said. "She is holding it." The words were calm enough to pass for manners, but Clara heard the warning under them. So did Elliot. For a few seconds, the only sound was the piano music leaking in from the mall corridor, bright and useless against the silence in the boutique. Lily shifted closer to Clara's skirt. Her star hair clip had slipped again, resting crooked above one eye. She looked terribly small beneath the lights, with both hands wrapped around a card that had suddenly made adults afraid. Isabella placed her hand on Vincent's arm again. Her bracelet clicked once. "Vincent," she murmured. "People are filming. Let Elliot handle it before this becomes something uglier." Vincent looked at the glass counter, not at her. In its reflection, he could see Elliot's left hand slide the cream envelope a little closer to Clara, as if positioning it for a photograph. He could see Isabella's face turned toward him, perfect and concerned. He could see Clara's eyes fixed on the envelope, already imagining how a word like fraud could follow her through every job she ever tried to get. Then Lily tugged softly on Clara's sleeve. "Mama," she whispered, loud enough for Vincent to hear because the room had gone so still. "He said the card's name before you did." Vincent's eyes lifted. Elliot stopped breathing for half a second. And on the cream envelope already waiting on the counter, beneath the boutique logo, Vincent saw a typed line that had no reason to be there yet. Suspected misuse of Moretti reserve instrument. Vincent did not reach for the envelope. He let the typed words sit there under the boutique lights, clean and official, as if paper could make a lie respectable. Suspected misuse of Moretti reserve instrument. Not card. Not payment method. Instrument. A word lawyers used when they wanted property to sound harmless. Elliot noticed where Vincent was looking and slid one hand over the line a second too late. Template language, he said, his voice still smooth. Our system fills certain terms automatically. Vincent looked at him then. Not long. Not hard. Just enough to make Elliot's throat move. Your system knows my family terms? He asked. Elliot opened his mouth, but Isabella answered first. Vincent, please, she said softly. You're turning a mistake into theater. Her tone stayed tender, but her thumb moved across her phone screen beneath the fold of her cream coat. Lily saw the glow. She did not understand secret messages. She only knew grown-ups usually looked at phones with their faces, not hidden in their sleeves. Vincent turned the old card in his hand. The ivory-black surface was not plastic like a normal card. It felt colder, denser, with a worn corner where someone had handled it for years but never used it carelessly. The silver crow was pressed into the face so lightly that it almost disappeared when tilted away from the light. On the back, in tiny lettering near the bottom edge, was a phrase Vincent had never seen on any bank card in his life. Family reserve, custodian use only. His signet ring caught beside it in the glass reflection. The same bird, the same angled wing, the same old Moretti mark his father had worn before him. For the first time, Vincent's fingers stopped moving. Clara saw it, and went pale. Mr. Moretti, she whispered. I can explain what little I know. Elliot cut in before she could continue. There is nothing to explain on the sales floor. We need to secure the item, run it through the terminal, and contact the issuing institution if one exists. He extended his hand toward the card. Lily stepped backward so quickly her rabbit backpack bumped Clara's knee. No, she said. The word was small, but it cracked through the room because it came from someone who had been frightened and spoke anyway. Elliot froze with his hand halfway out. Isabella's smile did not move, but her eyes sharpened. Lily, she said almost sweetly. Grown-ups are trying to fix a grown-up problem. Lily looked at the shiny payment machine on the counter. The blue button sat on the side, close to Elliot's thumb. Then she looked down the mall corridor beyond the glass doors, where a black concierge desk stood near the private elevator bank, with no display of watches, no velvet trays, no salespeople smiling too widely. Not that one, Lily said. Clara's breath caught. Baby. Lily pressed her cheek lightly against Clara's skirt, but she kept talking. Mama said the old card doesn't like the shiny machine. Elliot gave a short laugh, too quick to sound real. Children say imaginative things. She heard that in my kitchen, Clara said, her voice barely steady. Months ago. I didn't think she was listening. Vincent did not take his eyes off Lily. What machine does it like? He asked. Not gently, not warmly, precisely, as if he were asking a witness where the door had been left open. Lily lifted one finger and pointed toward the black desk. The quiet phone. Another small silence moved through the boutique. Elliot's face changed for less than a second. The practiced store manager warmth slipping into something bare and annoyed before he repaired it. The concierge desk has nothing to do with this purchase, he said. Then it has nothing to fear from a question, Vincent replied. Isabella stepped closer, her perfume reaching him before her hand did. Vincent, walking out there with a child's mystery card will only make this worse. As she spoke, her diamond bracelet turned once, twice, 3 times around her wrist. Vincent saw the movement. Lily saw the phone disappear into Isabella's coat pocket. Clara saw Elliot glance toward the black concierge desk as though he were calculating distance. Vincent placed the old card flat on his palm, not handing it to anyone. We are done with this terminal, he said. Elliot's jaw tightened. Sir, store protocol requires that any suspected fraudulent instrument remain under boutique control. Vincent picked up the cream envelope with his other hand and held it just high enough for Elliot to see the typed line again. Your protocol named this card before my people did. No one answered. Out in the corridor, the The black concierge desk sat quiet beneath a brass sign that read private banking services, and on its counter was a small card reader with no blue button at all. Vincent walked out of the boutique first, and the room followed him because power had weight even when it had just been publicly wounded. The corridor outside Veyron and Company seemed brighter than before. All white marble, brass rails, winter orchids, and soft music that made humiliation feel expensive. Clara kept one hand on Lily's shoulder and the other near the rabbit backpack, as if the small zipper could somehow hold back the eyes turning toward them. Elliot Vance came behind them with the cream fraud envelope tucked under his arm, his smile restored but thinner now. Isabella stayed close to Vincent, her voice low enough to sound private and high enough for the right people to hear. A private banking desk is not a playground, Vincent. We are letting a frightened child lead a financial matter. Lily heard the word child and looked down at her shoes. They were white sneakers with one loose strap. She pressed the old card against her chest and did not answer. The black concierge desk stood beside the private elevator bank, separated from the shopping corridor by a half wall of smoked glass. A woman in a navy blazer looked up from behind the counter, her expression professional until she saw Vincent's face, then Elliot's envelope, then the little girl holding the card. Mr. Moretti, she said carefully. How may I assist you? Vincent placed his declined receipt on the counter first. Then he placed the old ivory-black card beside it, not close enough for anyone to grab. A $1 verification, he said. No transfer, no account access, no purchase. Just tell me what the card is. Elliot stepped forward at once. That would be inappropriate without store custody documentation. Vincent did not look at him. This terminal belongs to the mall's private banking services, not your store. The concierge glanced between them, then turned her screen slightly away from the corridor. That is correct. Elliot's mouth closed. For the first time, Clara saw him lose the rhythm of his own authority. Isabella touched Vincent's sleeve. And if this becomes another decline in front of more people? Vincent's eyes stayed on the card. Then we will have one more fact. The concierge inserted the card into a narrow reader built into the desk. It made no cheerful sound, no approving chime, no retail beep. Just a soft click like a lock waking up. Lily leaned closer to Clara's skirt. The screen remained dark for 3 seconds. Then white text appeared on black glass. Custodian key detected. Air presence required. The concierge stopped typing. Clara covered her mouth. Elliot gave a quick laugh, but the sound came out dry. That terminal is obviously misreading an old card. The concierge turned toward him, offended in the quiet way only trained professionals could be. Sir, this terminal is not connected to your store system. Lily lifted one finger toward Elliot's hand. He keeps touching the blue button. Elliot looked down too late. His thumb was resting against the side of the portable POS he had carried from the boutique, right over the same small blue key. It's a function button, he said. For receipts. Vincent finally turned to him. Then print the function log. The corridor seemed to tighten. A security guard near the elevator shifted his stance. The concierge hesitated, not because Vincent asked, but because Elliot looked as if he wanted to stop her without saying so. Isabella's smile returned, but her bracelet moved once around her wrist. Vincent, this is getting absurd. You cannot let a preschooler accuse a store manager because she noticed a button. Lily's cheeks turned pink. She did not cry. She only whispered. It beeped after he pushed it 2 times. The concierge printed the mall verification slip first. It showed the $1 test had not touched any funds. It had only identified a custodian key. Then, after a pause that made Elliot's jaw harden, she connected the boutique POS to the audit cradle behind the desk and printed the transaction function log. Paper slid out in a thin white strip. Vincent picked it up before Elliot could. The first line showed his declined card. The second showed manual override. The third showed blue function input twice, for seconds before the decline. And beneath that, in small black letters, was a secondary authorization ID that made Isabella stop turning her bracelet. ID Vale Trust. ID Vale Trust sat at the bottom of the paper like a name trying to hide inside machinery. Vincent read it once, then again, and the stillness around him changed. It was not surprise anymore. It was calculation. Elliot Vance reached toward the strip of paper with 2 fingers. "That is internal routing language," he said. "It doesn't necessarily indicate a person." Vincent folded the log once and handed it to his nearest security man without looking away from Elliot. "Photograph it. Bag it. No one touches the original except counsel." Isabella's expression softened into concern so perfect it almost became beautiful. "Vincent, you're treating a retail error like a criminal proceeding." "No," Vincent said. "I'm treating a prepared accusation like evidence." Clara stood very still beside the smoked glass wall, one hand on Lily's backpack strap, the other pressed flat against her own stomach. She had gone quiet in a way that made Lily look up at her. Children knew when grown-ups were scared. They did not need the words. Lily tugged the zipper of the rabbit pocket halfway closed, then stopped. Her small fingers went to the little stitched seam inside. The one Clara had sewn by hand with beige thread because Lily kept losing crayons in the bottom of the bag. "Mama," Lily whispered. "The paper." Clara closed her eyes. The words hurt her before anyone else understood them. "Not here, baby." Lily did not take it out. She only held the backpack with both hands and looked at Vincent. "Mama said the card sleeps with the paper." Elliot's face flickered with irritation. "Mr. Moretti, this is exactly why store security should secure the belongings. A child is producing item after item, and there is no chain of custody." Vincent's eyes moved to Clara. "Then we create one." He took one step back from the counter and spoke to the concierge. "Bring 2 mall security witnesses, a tamper sleeve, and a table with camera coverage." The concierge nodded immediately. Isabella's bracelet turned once around her wrist. "You're frightening them," she said. "No," Clara said, so softly that everyone almost missed it. Then she lifted her head. "You are." The words landed harder than Clara intended. She seemed surprised by her own voice, but she did not take them back. A small service table was brought beside the concierge desk, under a dome camera in the ceiling. Mall security stood 6 feet away. Vincent's man photographed the rabbit backpack before Clara touched it. Clara knelt in front of Lily and held out both hands. "You don't have to be brave for me," she whispered. Lily shook her head, serious and pale. "Grandpa Watchman said keep it flat." Vincent's breath stopped for the smallest moment. "Grandpa Watchman." Clara opened the inner seam. From inside came a folded piece of paper wrapped in a thin plastic sleeve, old enough that its edges had softened but clean enough to show it had been protected for years. Clara placed it on the table, not in Vincent's hand. "Your father gave me this the night before he died," she said. "He said if I ever opened it too soon, I'd put my child in danger. I didn't have a child then." Vincent looked at the paper but did not touch it until the security witness sealed the table area in the camera frame. Then he slid on a pair of evidence gloves handed to him by his guard and unfolded the sleeve. The handwriting inside was unmistakable. Antonio Moretti wrote with heavy downward strokes, as if every letter had been carved instead of written. Vincent had seen that hand on baptism cards, funeral orders, land transfers, and once on a birthday note he had kept hidden for 22 years. The message was short. "If Vincent is locked out, Clara holds the reserve. Trust the child's hand before any polished smile." Beneath the signature was a small file code, A.M. Harper Custody File 17. Vincent did not speak. The mall music continued somewhere beyond the smoked glass, bright and indifferent. His father's silver watch felt suddenly heavy on his wrist. Antonio had known, or feared enough to prepare. Isabella stepped close, her perfume cutting through the colder scent of paper and plastic. "Vincent," she said, quieter now. "Old grief can make handwriting look familiar." For the first time that day, Vincent looked at her as if she were not beside him, but across from him. Then he took out his phone, photographed the note, and sent it to Marco Bellini with one instruction. "Verify the hand, the ink age, and file 17. Seconds later, Marco called. Vincent put him on speaker. The lawyer's voice came through low and tight. "Vincent, Where did you get that code? Vincent's eyes stayed on Isabella's polished smile. Why? A pause. Paper shifted on Marco's end. Then he said, because Harper Custody File 17 was sealed the week your father died. The words did not echo, but Vincent felt them travel through the smoked glass, the marble floor, the old watch on his wrist, and into a place in his chest he had kept locked for years. Harper Custody File 17 was sealed the week your father died. Isabella's hand stayed on his sleeve, light as silk, but suddenly Vincent noticed the pressure of her fingers, not comforting him, guiding him. Clara lowered her eyes as if the file number itself could accuse her. Lily, still pressed against her mother's knee, looked from one adult face to another and whispered, Mama didn't do bad. No one answered quickly enough. Vincent took the phone off speaker and turned slightly away, not far, just enough to make the conversation look private while keeping every reflection in the concierge glass. Marco, he said, pull emergency filings under my name. Trust amendments, banking restrictions, incapacity notices, anything time-stamped today. Marco did not ask why. That was why Vincent paid him and why Antonio had trusted him before that. Give me 90 seconds, Marco said. Vincent ended the call and placed the phone face down beside the old card. For the first time since the decline, there was a pocket of ordinary sound around them. A spoon tapping porcelain at the cafe across the corridor, a child laughing near the escalator, rain beginning to tick softly against the high glass roof of Aurora Crown Galleria. Lily watched the rain instead of the adults. She leaned into Clara and said, Can we go home after they stop saying you stole? Clara closed her eyes. That small sentence did more damage than any accusation Elliot had made. Vincent heard it. He did not look at Lily with pity. He looked at the cream fraud envelope, at the typed words waiting to ruin Clara's name, at Elliot's careful posture, at Isabella's perfect stillness. No one is leaving, he said quietly, until her mother's name is clean. Isabella exhaled as if she were tired of indulging him. Vincent, this is becoming emotional. He turned his head just enough to meet her eyes. No. It is becoming documented. His phone vibrated against the counter. Once, twice, Marco's name lit the screen. Vincent answered without speaking. The filing exists, Marco said. His voice had lost its usual polish. Emergency petition to suspend principal authority over Moretti Consolidated Holdings. Submitted this morning by Dorian Vale. Vincent's eyes moved, almost lazily, to the transaction log where ID Vale Trust sat in black ink. On what basis? Public evidence of financial instability and loss of transactional authority. A pause. Vincent, the filing time is 10:42 a.m. The concierge terminal clock read 11:06. Vincent looked back at the declined receipt. The transaction had happened at 10:59, 17 minutes after the freeze petition. The coldness in him settled deeper. They filed the explanation before the event, he said. Marco was silent for half a breath. Yes. Isabella's bracelet did not move now. That was worse than when it had. Vincent asked, What else? Paper shifted on Marco's end, fast and controlled. Your prenuptial agreement with Isabella includes a temporary trustee clause. If principal authority is suspended before the wedding due to documented instability, she can assume interim control over selected assets with Vale serving as financial administrator. Clara made a sound so small it barely became breath. Elliot looked down at the floor. Isabella's face did not break. It only became gentler, the way a knife looked clean before it was used. Vincent, she said, you know Dorian files protective measures all the time. This is what responsible people do when men under pressure start making unpredictable choices. Vincent did not answer her. He looked at Lily instead. The child was rubbing the corner of the rabbit backpack with her thumb, not understanding trusts, trustees, filings, or ownership. She only understood that someone had called her mother a thief and that the man everyone feared had not yet made them stop. I don't want your money, Lily said suddenly, as if she had been thinking about the only thing grown-ups might misunderstand. I just want them not to be mean to Mama. Vincent's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. Marco secure copies, every timestamp, every access log, and find out who knew about the reserve. Already moving, Marco said. One more thing. The Veil Trust code on that POS log matches a restricted review group, not a retail merchant code. Vincent slowly lifted his eyes to Isabella. Years of dinners, charity photographs, whispered advice, gentle hands on his grief. Every polished smile he had accepted because silence was easier than suspicion. All of it rearranged itself into something uglier. He had watched Clara carry bags through his house for months and never once asked why his father's old fear lived in her eyes. He had let Isabella stand close enough to guide him while the woman his father trusted stood near the service wall with a child and a hidden card. And now he understood the most dangerous part of the trap was not that his enemies had found a way to freeze him. It was that he had made it easy by looking past the only people who had been trying to protect him. Vincent did not apologize to Clara. Not yet. Apology made too early could sound like mercy, and what Clara needed now was proof. He turned the declined receipt over, placed the POS log on top of it, then set Antonio's folded note beside both like three quiet witnesses on the concierge counter. Marco, he said into the phone, lock every camera inside Aurora Crown Galleria for the last 24 hours. Store cameras, mall cameras, private elevator cameras, reflected display feeds if they keep them. Isabella tilted her head. Reflected display feeds? Vincent looked at her, almost gently. Rich buildings watch themselves from more angles than rich people remember. Elliot's mouth twitched. Dorian Vale had not arrived yet, but his name already seemed to stand among them, printed at the bottom of the log like a shadow. Isabella's phone vibrated inside her coat. She did not reach for it. That restraint told Vincent more than panic would have. A security director from the mall came quickly, a square-shouldered woman with a tablet and a radio clipped to her belt. She explained, politely, that boutique camera access belonged partly to Veyron and Company and partly to mall security. Elliot stepped forward at once. Our main camera system suffered a brief interruption earlier, he said. A standard network issue. 90 seconds at most. Vincent turned one finger over the declined receipt. Which 90 seconds? The security director checked her tablet. 10:58:41 to 11:11. Clara looked up. That's when he paid. No one corrected her. Elliot's smile held, but his eyes hardened. Unfortunately, yes, these things happen. Lily had been staring past them, not at the adults, but at the tall mirrored column across the corridor beside a perfume display. The column was polished black glass, decorative enough to be ignored, with gold letters advertising a fragrance launch. Near the top, half hidden behind a spray of white orchids, a tiny red light blinked once. Then again. Lily pulled Clara's sleeve. Mama, she whispered. That mirror blinked. The adults almost missed it. Vincent did not. He followed the child's finger, then looked at the security director. Does that column record? The woman turned, frowned, and tapped her tablet. That belongs to the fragrance installation. Separate vendor feed. It faces the boutique entrance. Elliot said too quickly, it wouldn't show the terminal. I did not ask what it would fail to show, Vincent said. Pull it. The file took 32 seconds to load. During that half minute, the corridor became a room without walls. Isabella stood with her hand resting on her bracelet. Elliot's thumb hovered near his phone but never touched it. Clara held Lily close enough that the child's cheek pressed into her coat. Vincent watched the loading bar move slowly across the tablet screen, and the calmer he became, the more everyone else seemed to understand that something had shifted. The footage opened in silence. There was Elliot at 10:54, standing just inside the boutique entrance. Then Isabella entered the frame before Vincent arrived. She did not look frightened. She did not look rushed. She handed Elliot a slim white temporary staff card. He accepted it with 2 fingers and slipped it beneath the counter. Then she leaned close, said something the camera could not hear, and smiled the same polished smile Antonio had written about years before. The security director froze the frame. That is a vendor access badge, she said. Store managers should not receive those from private guests. Isabella finally reached for her phone. Vincent's voice stopped her hand before it touched the coat pocket. "Leave it." She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time her gentleness cracked around the edges. "Vincent, you're letting a frightened maid and her child turn a misunderstanding into a spectacle." Lily lifted her face from Clara's coat. "I'm not lying," she said. The words were small, but they made the corridor quiet. Vincent picked up the old family reserve card and slid it into the inside pocket of his suit. "No," he said. "You are remembering." Then he turned to the security director. "Escort us to the VIP room. Invite Mr. Vale to join us. Tell him I'm ready to sign whatever he believes will calm the investors." Isabella's eyes narrowed by less than an inch. She understood part of it then, but not enough. Not yet. In the VIP room 10 minutes later, Dorian Vale laid a document face down on a walnut table, beside a silver pen and an empty circle where the Moretti signet mark was supposed to go. Vincent sat without touching it. His phone, face up on the table, showed one new message from Marco. Mirror footage secured, staff badge matched to Isabella. Vale document still needs live intent. The message stayed on Vincent's phone like a blade turned flat against the table. Mirror footage secured, staff badge matched to Isabella. Vale document still needs live intent. Dorian Vale sat across from him in a navy suit, silver hair perfect, hands folded beside the face-down document as if he were offering medicine instead of a trap. Isabella stood near the window of the VIP room, her reflection broken into pieces by the glass overlooking Aurora Crown Galleria's atrium. Below them, the same shoppers who had watched Vincent's card decline drifted around the central fountain, whispering into phones, pretending not to wait for more. Dorian slid the document forward. "This is temporary," he said. "A stabilizing measure. You sign. Isabella assumes limited trustee authority, and we reassure the investors before rumors do damage." Vincent looked at the empty circle where his signet mark belonged. "And if I refuse?" Dorian sighed, almost sadly. Then the morning's incident becomes harder to explain. Clara stood near the door with Lily in front of her, both guarded now by Vincent's men instead of watched by store security. Lily's fingers were locked around the strap of her rabbit backpack. She did not understand trustee authority, but she understood the way Dorian said incident, as if her mother's fear and Vincent's humiliation were only tools on a table. Isabella turned from the window. "Vincent, sign it in private. We can protect your dignity." Vincent's eyes stayed on the document. "No," he said. "If my dignity was damaged in public, repair should begin there." He rose, picked up the unsigned paper, and walked out. No one stopped him because no one knew whether they were following a defeated man or a very patient one. 10 minutes later, the atrium lights dimmed for the scheduled luxury launch, and Vincent Moretti stepped onto the small glass platform beside the fountain. Isabella stood at his right, Dorian at his left, Elliot Vance below the stage near the watch boutique entrance. Clara and Lily remained at the edge of the crowd, exactly where people like them were usually expected to stand. Vincent placed 3 objects on the clear podium: the declined receipt, the ivory black family reserve card, and Antonio's folded note in its evidence sleeve. The mall's legal representative stood behind Marco Bellini with a tablet. A private banking officer stood beside the security director. The screen above the fountain lit up. First came the receipt. Authority hold. Principal access suspended. Then the POS log. Manual override. Blue function input twice. ID Vale Trust. Elliot looked down. Then came the emergency petition. Timestamped 10:42 a.m., 17 minutes before the decline. A murmur passed through the atrium, low and spreading. Dorian's face did not change until Marco displayed the prenup clause, naming Isabella temporary trustee and Dorian financial administrator. Isabella's smile thinned, but she still held her chin high. "Legal protections can look frightening without context," she said. Vincent did not answer. He only nodded once to the security director. The screen shifted to the mirror column footage. There was Isabella, before Vincent ever arrived, handing Elliot the slim white vendor access badge. There was Elliot sliding it under the counter. There was Isabella leaning in close. No audio. Not yet, Dorian began. A silent video proves nothing. Lily suddenly pulled Clara's sleeve. Mr. Vincent, she said, small but clear. That's when she said make him look finished. The atrium went still. Isabella turned toward the child too quickly. She could not have heard me from there. The sentence left her mouth before she could dress it. Vincent closed his eyes for 1 second. Not because he was surprised, but because the pain arrived late. He had let that polished voice stand beside him in churches, hospitals, charity rooms, and his own home. He had allowed Clara to carry bags while carrying his father's warning. He had walked past Lily's rabbit backpack as if small things could not hold the truth. Marco touched the tablet, and the vendor badge audio file opened, pulled from the fragrance column's promotional recorder. Isabella's voice came through the atrium speakers, soft and unmistakable. Make him look finished before he reaches the old reserve. No one moved. Even the fountain seemed too loud. Isabella's hand went to her bracelet, but it did not turn. Vincent looked at her, and for the first time that day he could not speak. Then he picked up the family reserve card, set it directly on top of the unsigned trustee document, and turned to Marco with a calm so cold it made Dorian step back. File everything. File everything, Vincent said, and no one in the atrium mistook the quiet for mercy. Marco Bellini moved first, not with drama, but with procedure. The unsigned trustee document was placed in a clear evidence sleeve beside the family reserve card. The declined receipt, the POS function log, Antonio's note, the emergency petition, the vendor badge record, and the transcript from the fragrance column recorder. One by one, the private banking officer and the mall's legal representative signed the chain of custody form on the glass podium where everyone could see their hands. Isabella stood very still, her bracelet finally silent. Dorian Vale tried to speak to Vincent privately, but Vincent did not look at him. You filed to take control of my holdings before the event you used as evidence, Marco said, his voice carrying through the microphone. Your authority is suspended pending review by Moretti Holdings, outside counsel, and the trust board. Dorian's face lost color in a way no apology could fix. Elliot Vance was removed from the boutique floor by the mall's security director. Not dragged, not shouted at, simply stripped of his badge in front of the same windows where he had tried to brand Clara Harper a thief. The cream fraud envelope was opened, photographed, and voided on the spot. The typed accusation against Clara was stamped canceled before it could become a record that followed her. Then Vincent turned toward the edge of the crowd, where Clara still stood with Lily, pressed against her coat. For the first time all day, people stepped aside for them without being told. Clara did not move at first. She had spent too long in rooms where being noticed meant danger. Vincent understood that now, and the understanding hurt more than he expected. He walked to her instead. At the boutique counter, beneath the same lights that had made her look guilty an hour earlier, Elliot was required to read a statement prepared by mall counsel and witnessed by Marco. Clara Harper, he said, each word dry in his mouth. You were wrongly accused under an improper fraud procedure. The card in your possession was not stolen. You were the lawful custodian of the Moretti family reserve instrument. Clara's lips parted, but no sound came. Lily looked up at her mother as if waiting to learn whether those words meant they could breathe again. Vincent took the microphone from the stand. Clara Harper is not the maid in this matter, he said. She is the custodian my father trusted when he trusted almost no one. Behind him, Marco opened Harper Custody File 17 on the screen. It showed Antonio Moretti's signature, the sealed custody instructions, and the protection clause naming Clara as reserve custodian, not servant, not suspect, not disposable witness. Isabella's engagement authority was voided before the atrium emptied. The trustee clause was frozen. Dorian's access to Moretti accounts was cut off. Elliot's employment was terminated pending the mall's internal investigation and referral to legal authorities for transaction tampering. None of it looked like revenge. That made it cleaner. That made it final. Vincent ordered a new employee protection policy drafted before Clara left the building. Independent counsel for vulnerable staff, whistleblower protection, and no internal accusation allowed to be filed without outside review when a Moretti interest was involved. Clara was offered a paid custodian role with legal protection, not charity hidden in an envelope. Lily's face would not appear in the public statement. Vincent made sure of that himself. The family reserve card was scanned, sealed, registered, and then placed inside a new velvet-lined evidence case marked with Clara Harper's name as custodian. Vincent did not take it from her. He only knelt to Lily's height and handed the rabbit backpack back with both hands. "You kept it safe," he said. Lily studied him, serious beneath her crooked star clip. "Mama kept it," she said. "I just remembered." Vincent could not answer right away. Later, when the atrium lights softened and the crowd had gone, Clara, Lily, and Vincent sat in a quiet cafe near the glass roof while rain tapped gently above them. Lily drank a full glass of milk with both hands around it, her rabbit backpack beside her chair, the old card no longer hidden like a crime. Vincent wore Antonio's silver watch, and for once it did not feel like a wound. It felt like a warning he had finally learned to hear. The truth had not come from the loudest person in the room, or the richest, or the most polished. It had come from a little girl who remembered what adults tried to bury, and at last everyone listened.